Hello everybody, this is Lesson 3 Part 2. Lesson 3 Part 2. Hopefully everybody's doing alright. Notice you've got small short videos as the megabyte size of the file is smaller, so everybody can download them at their convenience and with whatever machine they have available to them. So we're in Lesson 3 Part 2, Lesson 3 Part 2, last part of Lesson 3. We've been talking about we're talking about philosophy. We're talking about the concepts of adventure programming. What is a facilitator? The ropes course, Project Adventure. And we talked about the adventure wave model. What the facilitator is always thinking about. The primary model for a facilitator. Now I'm going to bump back to some theory that will support this. And then that will close up Lesson 3. And then Lesson 4 we'll be looking at individual motivation. Because now once we've discussed or given a shell or an outline or an idea of what the facilitator is, now we have to see the kind of people the facilitator is dealing with. The people in the group. People, are they motivated, are they not motivated, etc. To finish Lesson 3, go to your note packet to page 4. Note packet, excuse me, note packet page 1. I'm sorry, note packet 1, page 4. Note packet 1, page 4. Okay, and this is Lesson 3, Part 2. And so we look at this page here. It says most experiential learning programs are founded on the belief that learning and behavior change must focus on including direct experience. In the process, all change has some form of experience at the base of its origin. But experiential learning, okay, which we've been talking about, which is learning by doing with reflection, experiential learning asks that the learner be placed as close as possible to that base of origin because this process is often more valuable for the transmission of knowledge than other forms of learning. Okay, so what that means is that the group, the individual, must experience. They must have an experience. And when they have the experience, they must be given time to reflect on it, to look on how they can change, look on how they can grow, look on what they did well, what they didn't do well. Absolutely essential. That's what that's saying. Second paragraph here says, given this perspective, experiential learning, or learning by doing with reflection, often requires problem solving, etc. So we kind of talked about, loosely defined as learning by doing combined with reflection. Here's what's important. It's an active rather than a passive process. You can't just sit on your butt the whole time and have a true experience. You must get involved. And getting involved means that you're going to have an experience to draw from so that learning can take place. Now here's the most important part on this sheet, which you'll see on the test that I'll refer to multiple times. Okay, sorry, I don't think you can see me. It looks like I'm the dark floating head. Anyway, okay, so we have this is an active process. So number one, it requires that the learner be self-motivated. The person in your group, the person you are leading must be self-motivated. If they're not self-motivated, if they do not care, they have bad attitude, okay? They just want to be dependent on folks the rest of their life. That's their prerogative, that's their deal. You cannot help them within the context of what we're talking about as a facilitator. Now, there's other leadership styles that you can use to help that person. But a facilitator can't necessarily make that horse drink. Okay? The horse must come to the water first. So there must be at least some self-motivation, at least a little bit. And a facilitator can make it happen. If they don't have any at all, then you have to change leadership styles and bump into a different style. So talking about facilitator, they must be self-motivated and responsible for their learning, meaning accountable. When you ask somebody to introspect, to look at themselves and say, I think I made a mistake, I'm sorry, that's huge. Most people go through their entire life without really saying sorry to anybody. It's very sad. The ability to introspect and be vulnerable with one's feelings, okay? To be vulnerable with one's feelings and to look at oneself and say, I did this wrong. I need to change. I need to grow. If everybody was like that, it'd be a different world, okay? But they must have some responsibility for their learning. So self-motivated and responsible for the learning, and the teacher, which means the facilitator, is responsible to and not for the learner. So let me get this real straight. When we're talking about being a facilitator in terms of rec leadership, recreation leadership, in the facilitator role, you are not responsible for their learning. Okay, I'll say it again. You're not responsible for their learning. You are not responsible. You are responsible to. What to means is you provide the best atmosphere, the best environment, the best program, the best activity, the best debrief or debriefs or discussions, reflection periods. That's what you do. And you do it with excellence and with strong ethics. And when you do that, you have done your job. Being responsible to the group, to the people you're leading, not for them. If they choose not to introspect, not reflect, and not decide that they're going to have any learning or growth experience with you, that is their choice, and they have used their own choice to remove themselves from your ability to impact them as a facilitator. Now remember, we're talking about the facilitator role. There's other types of leadership that can, mostly militant-based leadership, which can be very effective for those kinds of folks. But in the facilitator role, you are responsible too. So you got to stop you got to stop being concerned when you're working with your groups, whether or not somebody's getting it or not. You do your absolute best to be clear, provide the best opportunity, and if they receive that opportunity and they experience that positive atmosphere and that good environment that you have set up, they will learn, they will grow, and they will trust you. And we'll get to that all later in the class, but there's some real powerful elements in there, not just theoretical, research-based elements that happen in the facilitator-group relationship. But I want to get on a tangent, so right now we're just talking about you were responsible to and not for. Responsible to and not for. Okay, so next paragraph down. Experiential learning, or learning by doing with reflection, is also predicated on the belief that change occurs when people are placed outside of comfort. They must take a risk, a willingness to take a risk, to do something different, to be, I don't know, it depends on the person. Okay, placed outside of positions of comfort, into states of dissonance, basically a light form of anxiety, nervousness, doing something different. Okay, which means talking in front of the group, maybe sharing a personal story. There's a lot of ways that folks can take a positive risk. In these states, participants are challenged by the adaptations necessary to reach equilibrium. What equilibrium means is your zone state, your flow state, your comfort zone. Because what you're going to do is you take a risk, but you don't like that. It's uncomfortable, it feels weird, you feel nervous, you feel butterflies, whatever. So you want to get back to zero, back to comfort. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. But the more positive risks you take, the more that you force yourself to develop new interpersonal skills to deal with the anxiety or the discomfort, and then that gets you back to your comfort zone. Now, that probably sounds super abstract, but I have several models in the note packet that will show this very clearly as we move on in the class. Okay. Now, here's some things in segueing lesson 4. Here's some things that are important for the people in your group, or the learner. Number 1 through 5, which you'll probably see on the test. Okay. Number 1. The learner is a participant rather than a spectator in learning. Number 1, the learner is a participant rather than a spectator in learning. You must get your people involved in activities. You must get them doing something, talking to each other, interacting, okay, participating. If they just sit, they'll only learn so much. And the kind of learning we're talking about right now is an interpersonal learning, a development of skills that will help them be future leaders. And to get them to do that, to get them to have those, to develop those interpersonal skills, they can't just sit and listen. It's not going to happen. All right. Number 2, learning activities, as we've talked about, require personal motivation in the form of energy, involvement, and responsibility. Your participants, okay, your clients, people that you are leading, okay, when you are in a facilitator leadership role, they must be accountable. They must be self-responsible. They must say, oh, yep, that was my mistake. Oh, yep, I did that. Oh, no, I need to change this. Oh, I need to do that. They must be responsible. If they blame it on everybody else, if they just do the blame game, okay, then they are not self-motivated, and they will not benefit from it. Okay, looks like I got to come back to finish this, so there'll be a lesson 3, part 3.